Welcome everybody, all our audience to the first of our Northern Writers Awards roadshows for this year, and what is our very first ever virtual roadshow. This is brought to you by New Writing North and connected to our project, the Northern Writers Awards, which has launched today. I'm Will Mackey. I'm the Senior Programme Manager for Writing and Awards at New Writing North, and I work across our writer development programmes. And the Northern Writers Awards is kind of probably the biggest project that I work on, and the most enjoyable as well. The roadshow today is a kind of introductory first roadshow that we're doing. It's an overview, I suppose, of the awards themselves. In the next few months, we have roadshows to do with specifically about fiction, poetry, TV writing and children's writing, so look out for those as well. The first of those is the fiction one, which is on 10th of December. There's a huge amount of information about the awards that I'm not going to give you at the moment because it would take up the next half an hour. But the best way to find out everything you need to know is to visit the Northern Writers Awards website, where you'll find information about every award that's on offer this year. The awards themselves are open until the 18th of February. So I'm not going to tell you everything you need to know at the moment, but I'll just tell a few kind of key things that I identified earlier as kind of key elements of the awards that we'd like you to know. First of all, they're free to enter. There's no entry charge at all, and there never has been. The awards are open to writers based in the north of England. If you're not from the north of England, but you're here tonight, please stick around because I'm sure it will be interesting for you anyway to be here. We've got lots of stuff to get through today. We have multiple different award categories for writers at various career stages and for various types of writers. So for poets, for TV writers, for novelists, for people writing short stories, for people writing creative nonfiction as well. What unites all of our awards is that we support unpublished work in progress, so work that is still being developed. And the ethos of the awards really is to put some faith into people's work at a developmental stage that helps them to continue to progress with that work and eventually to bring it to fruition. So this evening, we're joined by 4 previous winners. The novelist and poet Kit Fan, novelist J.A. Mensah, the poet Polly Atkin, and TV scriptwriter Alex Clark. And I'm going to ask each of them just to introduce themselves now, just for a minute or so, just to tell us a little bit about their writing and about the award that they won. So I'm going to start with Kit.
Hi everybody, it's great to see you virtually. And my name is Kit Fan. I won the Northern Writers Award, was it 2018? Could be, I can't remember when, but yeah. For poetry, for fiction, sorry. I was a poet, but I started writing fiction, so I needed some confidence to know that I can do it, really. so I submitted for the award. My debut novel, Diamond Hill, is coming out in May 2020 with Dialogue Books, Little Brown.
Thank you, and congratulations, Kit, on Diamond Hill.
Thank you.
Really look forward to reading. Juliana.
Hello, my name is Juliana, and I publish as J.A. Mensah. I'm delighted and a little nervous to be here. It's strange not to see all the faces of the people who are in the room, but it's lovely to know that we've got so many people here. I write prose and for the stage, and I won a Northern Writers Award in 2016, the Arvon Award. And that's an award that gives you the opportunity to go on an Arvon retreat to develop a piece of work. And the work I was developing was my novel in progress, Castles from Cobwebs. And then in 2019, I won the Northbound Book Award for the completed manuscript. And as part of that award, I won publication with Saraband Press. And my debut novel is coming out next February.
Brilliant, we're really looking forward to that one as well. Thanks, Juliana. Polly.
I'm Polly Atkin. I'm a poet. I also write non-fiction as well. I first won a Northern Writers Award in 2014 when I won the Andrew Waterhouse Prize for environmental writing for an extract from what became my first poetry collection, which was then published in 2017. And I think that really helped get that towards publication. And then I just won one this year for work which is going towards my second poetry collection, which is coming out next October. And again, I think just to help finalize that date and everything else. So I think it's been really helpful along the way for me.
Brilliant, thanks, Polly. And Alex as well.
Yes, so I was writing a little bit of theatre when I applied for an award and won. I think it was in 2017 now, and it feels like about 6 million years ago, like when we were all allowed in rooms together. And it completely transformed my life. I was working sort of like 12-hour shifts as a cleaner at the time, and never expected to win anything. And since then, God, I think I've got 3 series in development at the moment for television, drama, a couple of feature films in development, and I'm just about to hopefully sign on the dotted line for another comedy series, and that's in the US that we're hoping to take into development. So it was down to the award. So yeah, I'm really chuffed to be here and sort of like tell everybody you've got to enter, because if I hadn't, I wouldn't be doing all the stuff that I'm doing now. So yeah, that's me. Hello.
Thanks, Alex. I mean, it's so fulfilling to hear each of you talk about what you've achieved, and just, you know, for me, there's like so much admiration as well for how much each of you has done in really like short spaces of time as well to achieve so much with your work. It's really inspiring to see, and I think it's something that's really special for other writers who are out there who are thinking, you know, what's the next step for me, to hear from each of you. So thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We are gonna ask a lot of the questions that people sent in, which we're really grateful for. So we're going to try and get through as many of those as possible. I know you'll the audience, you'll send so many good questions to us. There are a few that I can answer pretty quickly myself, so I'm going to do that now before we hear from our panelists. Someone asked a question, can you enter something you entered before? So if you've previously entered the awards and you're thinking about whether you should enter again, if you were not successful or you were shortlisted but didn't quite win, then definitely, yes, definitely apply again. Every year, the system is completely reset. We have new judges, new readers at the reading stages. It's basically a renewed awards program to enter. There are many previous winners who have entered like 1, 2, 3 times in the past before winning. So just please don't lose hope. Please do apply again. We really want you to, and you know, it could be your year. Another question: do stories need to have a northern angle or just be written by a northerner? So the answer to that is you really just need to be based in the north of England. You don't have to be you know, born in the north, or have those kind of credentials, or you just need to be living in the north of England. And no, they don't need to have a kind of northern flavour to them, although obviously that's really welcome as well. But we're not confining at all about subject matter. One person wrote in a question about being a little bit older and whether he or she should enter the awards or not. But the answer to that is yes, you should definitely enter the awards. We you know, it's never too early or never too late in life to begin writing or to begin to put your work out there. So please do enter the awards. Another question: is there any support or advice available to access before the submission deadline to help get my manuscript into as good shape as it can be? And again, I hope you're out there, because this event tonight is kind of partly designed to do that, to give you to give you that advice about entering for the awards and the mechanics of it and how you go about doing it. So I really hope that, as well as sending the question in, that you came along. Okay, and during the session tonight as well, if you want to put questions into the chat, we'll try and come back to them at the end to answer them. So we're now going to move on to the questions that people have sent in that I'm going to ask you guys to answer. So the first sort of batch of questions I thought were kind of very specifically to do with kind of entering the awards and how you go about doing that. So the first question is, how does the award help writers progress their writing careers? And I thought that each of you could answer this one, and maybe begin with Polly.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's very different in a way for poetry than for some of the other kinds of writing that the award deals with, because there's so many different, and much more so than when I first entered, because I first entered the Northern Writers Awards in 2013, I think. And there were much fewer categories then, and lots of the categories now have inbuilt things about career progression. But for the Poetry Awards, I think it's really just giving you that support and that boost and that confidence, and then being able to, if you don't already have a publisher as well, take that to a publisher and say, look, someone else already believes in me, which is an awful thing to have to say, but that is how it works in a very competitive market, which is also a phrase I would like not to have to be applying to poetry, but that is how it works. So having that backing behind you already, I think, makes just an enormous difference in other people then being willing to back you as well, and it gives you that visibility. And then New Writing North are an amazing organisation who have lots of other opportunities as well. So once you know them, then knowing what else they're doing, I think, is really useful as well in terms of career progression.
Fab, thanks for that. And I think that we offer various types of support, which can involve some money, a bursary, and it can involve mentoring. Some of the awards are a manuscript appraisal or a retreat. But this thing about the validation, I suppose, of the awards, I think that you've picked up on is I think really important. And I suppose it's not one that we kind of put in the you will win validation of your awards. It's sort of implicit within it. But I don't know if the others felt that was important as well. Juliana?
Yeah, absolutely. For prose, my experience of winning the awards was very much, I guess, two-pronged. So I won the first one with a work in development, and then won a second, which was for the same work once it was finished, and which saw it through to publication. But I think even if you don't have that journey with the awards, I felt a sense of support from New Writing North, and what Polly was saying about keeping an eye out on what else they're doing. But also what I felt was that you became part of their network, so they remembered you when there were particular opportunities. At this point at which I won the first award, as I say, it was a work in progress and wasn't finished, but I was still invited to the talent salon in London that year to meet with publishers and with agents, even though I wasn't yet at the point that I would have been sending them work. And that was great because I could go there without the pressure of having to show something finished, because they knew that I'd won an award that was helping my development. Yeah, and I think also for prose writers, if you are writing to agents and trying to approach people with your work, being able to say that you won this award and that they see value in the work that you're doing really does add strength to what you're saying and validate your work.
Yeah, thanks for that. And Kit, I think you came along to some of our sort of events as well, didn't you? And
I did, yeah. I thought it was immensely helpful to shape my writing career, if there's such a thing called writing career. I think I wouldn't have, I would still have written my novel, but I don't think I would have such kind of powerful impetus to do it. And I think submitting it to the award and then having won it, met other people, writers who have won it, and also the opportunity of New Writing North provided is just absolutely brilliant. I think you mentioned the literary salon, but I think it's also, I I think I went to a workshop that actually helped us kind of support us how to learn to pitch to literary agents, which was a big, I mean, I was totally new to the kind of, you're kind of aware that this is a very competitive world, but ultimately, I suppose, publishers are selling stories as products, books. So I think we do need, they think about the market. So I wasn't thinking about that, but I think it's important to be aware of what you need to do. And I think the awards really helped me understand not only the writing career, but how the publishing industry functions.
Yeah, and I think we do try to act as a bridge between writers and the industry, and kind of open some doors into the industry for people as best we can, make introductions, that kind of thing. And we also, we do that with the publishing industry, which is hard to to get access to. And we also do that with the broadcasting industry, I guess through Alex's award. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I sort of will second what Kit was saying. It's sort of going in, sort of like you're creating sort of on your own these wonderful worlds, or whatever it is that you decide to create. And you're not necessarily, or at least then, I wasn't necessarily thinking about how does that reach the marketplace, and how do producers kind of engage with that work and then go and sell it. And I had very little understanding of those procedures, whether it be in broadcast and terrestrial television, and then streaming services, and then European, and then also the US market. I had very little understanding about how all of those joined up. So I was just sort of like, I'm going to create this wonderful world, and then that's all I need to do. And it would be lovely if that's all we needed to do. And I wish it was all that I needed to do. But what the mentorship with Marjorie Bone at Bonafide was able to do was sort of like show me the world of terrestrial TV and high-end TV, and how all of that works, and everybody's kind of role within getting a show up and running. And that's really important for a writer who wants to write in television, particularly on an original idea, which is actually quite a different process than going into an existing show. So for me, that mentorship and having somebody like Marjorie there that is helping you kind of broaden out, I suppose, and she woke me up quite a lot to the mechanics of the industry, and that's been incredibly beneficial for me going forward into other pitching arenas, and in talking to other producers and building those relationships, because now I understand that they're pivotal relationships, and that your producer will be going into broadcasters, and they'll be going into these places that are going to buy content, and therefore you need to be able to build those three-way kind of relationships and maintain them. I had no idea about any of that before winning this award, so it was just it's just brilliant. So yeah, can I mention one other thing as well? And I think I've mentioned this before, Will. The money. I got a bursary, and at the time, I cannot even tell you how skint I was. I had no laptop, I had no software. So getting the bursary, getting that £3,000 meant that I was actually able to buy a laptop and stop going to the library and typing up all my notes at the end of the week. It may not sound like a lot of money to some people, but it was just life-changing. It was like, oh, I can actually relax and concentrate on a piece of work for a couple of months. And that was just transformative. Yay, everybody answered. It was great.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Alex. And yeah, I mean, the money is incredibly important. it's incredibly important to reward people. It's an incredibly important way of just saying that, you know, in a meaningful way, that we think that your writing is good and we want you to continue with it. And it's, you know, it can make a massive difference, obviously, to people to have some way of supporting their writing in that way. And it's a good moment for me, I think, to thank the sponsors of our awards, who are Northumbria University, who support the mainstream fiction and poetry sides of our awards, and Channel 4, a lead sponsor of the TV awards that Alex was one of the winners of, and also for Arts Council England, who are our core supporters across the awards. And we obviously we couldn't do such an incredible range of support for writers without that help. The next question I was going to ask is, how did you decide which extract or piece to submit to the award? And I thought I'd ask Polly and Alex this one. And Alex, maybe you go first, because you have so many ideas, and the question is really, how did you select one for them?
My daughter selected it, so I was off the hook, really. She had wanted me to write, she'd wanted me to pursue a piece of work that I'd kind of shelved for a couple of years, and it was a magical realist piece about a young autistic girl who had created an imaginary world to escape domestic violence that was going on in her home. And it had puppets in it, and she was like, I really want you to send this idea to them. And I did. So I didn't really choose. It's a cop-out, isn't it? But I didn't choose the idea, she did, and she was right. So she got a little bit of the bursary money. She was like, give me some money for that. Mom.
Yeah, well, I think that's good advice, you know, listen to people around you who you trust.
Is that like commission at that point, Alex, that she she gets?
That's her.
I very much so. Having said I've won twice with poetry collections in progress. I have submitted other times, and Wool probably has a record somewhere of strange submissions that I have applied to. The glory of the awards is that they are free to enter, and I think that's really important in trying out different projects as well. And when I first started seriously writing nonfiction and long form nonfiction, I did submit some of that as well, and I didn't win. Luckily, I went off and did other things with that instead. I didn't give up. And really, I've just kind of submitted what I've been working on, or what I think is most pressing of what I've been working on at the particular time. So there's less logic, I think, to my submission process than maybe with Alex's. But the beautiful thing about the fact that it is free and it runs every year is that you have lots of chances to submit different projects and see what goes, I guess. And hopefully you don't mind people doing that as well, sending you different kinds of things every year.
No, we really don't. And it's I think it's an important aspect as well, you know, because we acknowledge how challenging it is to move from writing in one area to another area, and that we don't want people to feel confined, you know, that you just have to come back with the same, you know, through the same thing again and again. And obviously, Kit, you went from being a poet to a novelist. You're still a poet, you haven't stopped being one, but you went from you were an established poet and you came in and wrote a novel. And making those sort of transitions is really challenging, you know, because they're so distinct in both terms of the creative process and the market that you're trying to enter into as well. Okay, the next question we had, can I ask about how you found the process of application, such as filling in the forms and accessing the system, and if you feel like it was a straightforward process to use? So Juliana and Alex, I thought you could answer this one. And Juliana?
Yes, I found it really easy. I found it very straightforward. One of the things I found really useful was it asks you about your writing and about how, I don't know whether it still does in this round, but the last time I applied, there was a question about my writing career and my ambitions and where the project I was submitting, where it fit. And it was actually really useful to have to think about that. because I think I always have a sense of what it is I want to do, but to actually have to sit back, think about it, and then put it into words and explain it to somebody, it was a really valuable exercise, I found.
Great, yeah, I think that sense of kind of articulating what your work is, and what you're trying to do with it, what the challenges you are facing in your project, that's sort of the information we really want to know when we're trying to think about how we're supporting people with to progress that work. So yeah, there's kind of quite a lot of rationale behind the questions, I think, that we ask. And yeah, Alex,
the awards might make to that.
Sorry?
So what difference the award would make to that, you know, why this particular award is right for that particular project.
Yeah, and that is all really important. Although I will say that it's not as important as the work itself. That's always, you know, what we're looking at most closely, but the other stuff gives a lot of context. And Alex, the same question to you.
I find sort of any application process terrifying, so I tend to avoid them. And this one was really easy. One, it's free as well, so it's always worth sort of like throwing your hat in the ring if you've got an idea. But there was something just about how simple it was, because it sort of like laid out exactly what you wanted to see. So a bit about you as the writer, and then even more about the project. So it really did help, like it's just been said, to really outline and get it concise and get your idea as clear and concise as possible. So it's even you know really what you want to focus on and what you actually want to do and what you're talking about or want to talk about. And the way I kind of approached it was thinking, well, even if I hear nothing back, I have this as future reference for when I do actually go and write this thing. I've got these 3 chunky paragraphs that I can work from. So yeah, that's how I kind of delved into it, because some application processes can take weeks and it's a full-time job. And my brain just isn't, it's just not made for that kind of precision. And no, as we can see now, I'm trailing off already. I'm losing my own train of thought and I'm speaking. So yeah, I love the fact that it was short and it was sweet. So yeah, it was made really simple, which is helpful.
Great, thank you. And I wanted to also at this point just make the point that we do ask for, we ask for details about who you are, where you live, your name, but all of the personal information is suppressed during the judging process. So the judging is done completely anonymously through the reading processes and the final judging stages of it as well, which we feel is really an important part of the process, to make it as even and as fair as it can be. But we ask certain questions that we need to know for statistics, and obviously we need your name in case you win, so that we can let you know. So we need to know who you are. Another question on this kind of round: did you think much about the judges and people assessing the awards before you entered, and what they might be looking for? So Kit and Polly, I thought you could answer this one. Maybe Kit first. Did you think about the judges?
I was nosy about the judges. I mean, we are always nosy, aren't we, when you know who are judging you. So I did Google them and found out who they are. But then ultimately, I'm not writing. I wasn't thinking I'll have to write something that pleased them, because I actually don't know who they are. I mean, apart from their names and might have, I don't know. So I wasn't thinking much about the judges, and what they're looking for. But I think what I was thinking was what I was looking for in this. Regardless of whether I was going to win or not, I was thinking, what is this novel is going to be about? Like, I've only started maybe 5,000 words or something, but then the writing, the application process actually forced me to think that. So I suppose having the judges there, I was aware that I had to really do my homework. I have to really, because I'm being judged. And I think that helped, actually. because I was trying to be as frank and open to myself as possible when I was writing the application, because I know I really need to be clear about what this project is. Otherwise, no judges will, I mean, they will see through it. That's what I thought.
Okay, interesting that, yeah, it gave you a bit more kind of clarity on what it was you were doing. Yeah, and Polly?
So I have mixed kind of flip side thoughts on this in some ways, particularly with poetry, because poetry is such a small world. You do, if you've been around for a while, you do get to the point where you kind of do know everybody, or at least have a sense of what you think their work is, and maybe whether you think they might like your work in some way as well. I think you can never second guess really what a judge in any kind of competition will think about your work, and I think you can't write to a particular judge in that way. I think that's just you're on a hiding to nothing with that, because you just don't know. I mean, I think you just have to do the best work that you can and be pleased with that work yourself and send it in and hope that that speaks for itself. On the other hand, I do find that I can be put off by judges who I think might not like my work. You know, if I look at a judge for something and think, well, I've met them and they seem very unimpressed by my writing, that would put me off entering. But I think that's quite a kind of niche poetry way to look at it in some ways.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, it's possibly a bit of it's very specific to the poetry world, I guess, in that respect. But it's a really interesting answer. Thank you.
But then I suppose the side of that is that, you know, when like this year, the having Varney Capildeo as a judge and having their endorsement for the work when I admire their work so intensely much just made it mean so much more. And it would have meant a lot anyway, but it's just like a beautiful cherry on top of that. So the judges really matter in that way, but I think you can't, as I say, you just can't second guess what they're going to like.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, exactly. And you know, we choose the judges really carefully, and we can be quite ambitious, I think, in the people we approach. So approaching Varney was something that I was really keen to do last year, for example. And I'm so glad that they was able to do it, had the space in an incredibly busy schedule. I was going to mention this year's judges on our kind of mainstream categories. Andrew McMillan is our poetry judge this year, and judging on our fiction side are Jacob Ross and Kathy Ransom-Brink, and they've all been announced today. Okay, so the next batch of questions, moving quite quickly through them, is kind of questions that I thought were more to do with the writing process. So we're going to ask a couple of these from people that have sent them in. So the first one, how do you keep going with an idea if you feel it might run out of steam? And again, I thought Polly and Alex could answer these ones. Polly first.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, in some ways I'm a poet, so I don't have to think about that question very much. I often sit in workshops which are really designed for fiction writers or screenwriters, where people will say, you just have to keep slogging away at it. Just keep working, just keep going, get up every morning. And then, like, I'm a disabled poet. I write when I feel like writing. And if I think an idea doesn't have legs, I probably shelve it. And if it keeps bugging me in a way, if it keeps kind of recurring to me, then I'll go back to it and think, oh, there's something here, but maybe which I hadn't got to the point of it yet. But I'm very much kind of ideas led in that way. So I kind of follow the ideas around, like I follow deer around, and don't kind of sit out there tempting them in too much. But I think, you know, to keep writing and to write prose, you have to have a bit of stamina with it, and you're going to have bits where you're really bored. I'm editing one of my nonfiction projects at the moment, and I have to even though I'm loving doing it, I have to keep making myself open the document because it's really kind of stressful and anxiety inducing to do it. And then I just think you have to have very serious talks with yourself. That I find that's the best way to proceed. Kind of get a grip on yourself and kind of shake yourself a bit.
Keep going. Yeah. Okay. And Alex, to keep, you know, maintaining an idea, sort of retaining belief in it, I suppose.
Maybe witchcraft, just a lot of prayer. I don't know. No, I'm really scheduled, so I will write beat sheets, treatments. I will write down and stick up everywhere that I can see. The reason why I've picked that project, the reason why I need to be talking about that particular thing. And some days just literally lying in bed and just hitting the keyboard and hoping that something happens, and continually going. So it is some days really arduous and it feels very much like work, and then other days it just feels beautiful and like being on a little cloud drifting through it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bit like Polly's just said. It's, you don't want to pull the shell out of the sand to sort of like quickly and break it. But you still have to pull it out and sort of shake all the sand off and see what's there. So yeah, sorry, there's a helicopter going over, so it's like feels really low, like it's about to go into the house.
Yes. Okay.
I love the idea though that if you kind of put me and Alex together with your scheduling, your planning, and my complete lack of it, that you might actually get one fully functioning writer. If you kind of
like Play-Doh.
Yeah.
Fab. Thank you for that. Juliana and Kit, I'm going to ask you this question, and it's not. This is something that terrifies a lot of novelists, and it's the synopsis question. So I don't know a single writer who enjoys writing a synopsis, but I wanted to ask you if you could offer any advice to people about synopsis writing, Juliana, and then Kit.
So I'm not a fan of writing a synopsis either. Two things I suppose that I was told that I found really useful, and one was actually on the Arvon retreat that I went on with the New Writing North Award, with the Northern Writers Award, and it was Ella Wakatama Alfrey who said it. She's an editor, and she said, try to get the shape of the novel without feeling as though you need to kind of tell the person every single thing that happens. And the most important thing she felt was getting a sense of the reading experience. So rather than everything that happens, what is it, atmospheric? Is it lyrical? What's the experience of reading this novel? And how do you guide the reader through the story? I found that really useful because I liked it, but other advice I've seen has been very, very different. But I found that I've gone back to that. And so I give a general sense of the story, and I don't have too many, I do leave some mystery about the story. Lots of advice says, you know, don't put in all the spoilers, let them know, because people want to see the structure of the story and they want to know how you're handling that. And while that's useful, that's the thing that I struggle with. So I like giving a sense of the whole thing, and then more a sense of what it's like, what I'm trying to do with the novel. But I'm not sure if that's the right answer or not, because as I say, I wrestle with the synopsis. I really don't.
Great answer. I love that idea actually of the focusing on the actual reading experience of it, and maintaining an element of mystery in the synopsis. I think is a really hard thing to do actually, because you're compressing something that is long and, you know, huge, expansive into something very, very small, and where you have far less kind of scope to actually write anything about what it really is. But I think that's really, really good advice. Kit, are you going to surprise me and say that you love writing a synopsis?
I don't love it, but I don't hate it actually.
Okay.
I think, I don't know, I think writing synopsis is like writing a recipe out. You kind of know what you're you can't, maybe it's like a very complicated recipe that you have to cook, and you kind of know the steps, you know how it's going to develop. But if somebody asks you to write it down, it will always surprise you. Because it's something that you're kind of automatically doing, that you don't think like the need to write it down. But actually, I'm slightly different from Juliana. I think that a synopsis should be, it's almost like not seeing as a kind of mirror. It should just be a piece of glass. You should just let people see through it. And so think about just matter of factly, like telling like instruction or something, like you just really do it step by step. This is how the story develops. These are the characters, and this is how it ends. So if you're writing a murder mystery, you have to tell what's the secret of the murder history in the synopsis. It's pointless to conceal it, in my point of view. Yeah. When I write it, I do write it chapter by chapter. This is what happens in this chapter, and this is the end. Because I think those people who are reading the synopsis are not necessarily novelists. You have to remember. People who are reading the synopsis, they could be literary agents, they could be publisher. They are not novelists, a lot of them. So they are approaching narrative and story in a way unlike a novelist. They want to know how the story develops. And I could see that because I'm not a screenwriter, yeah? I want to know how a film develops. I don't want cryptic. So I'm just trying to think in their shoes when I'm writing a synopsis.
Yeah, I suppose that's quite a hard thing to do in a way, isn't it? Because you're writing it, it's your work. You've got to step outside of yourself,
Yeah,
and really distance yourself from your own work, which I think is hard, right?
it is. That's what I think. Like reading things like recipe books or at a packet of I don't know, whatever, like lasagna that you have to heat up, then you really like read the back package, you see the instruction, then you go, oh my god, there is a language which is totally transparent. It's just telling you to do, it's almost like factual, and in a way I found that very useful when I read recipes and then write synopsis, because you really have to tell my character starts in chapter 1, that's what happens, almost like a factual way. And that's in a way almost like what the recipe is like, telling you step by step.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it is a little bit like that, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, yeah. It is hard to write. I mean, I'm not saying that it's very easy.
It is, but one of the things that I really struggle with that approach is how much space you have. So if somebody asks for half a page or for a page, sometimes I think the reason I struggle with it in trying to approach it like that, it feels as though it sucks the life out of the thing. And you're right, people do need to know the shape of it and the whole piece. But I think often when you're sending work to people, they'll also get the first couple of chapters. So it's part of the whole package that they'll be getting. So you need to do the best that you can with the synopsis, but know that they will be seeing an extract of your work as well.
Okay, thank you for both of you for that such a considered answer. That is really, really helpful, I think, to people who are approaching this thing. For the awards, we asked for a synopsis of up to 600 words, which isn't too long, but it is really useful, and we do really need it. There's a couple of questions we've had about agents. Now, I think we can answer them, but really quickly. And what I'll say is that for our roadshow coming up on the 10th of December, if you're really interested in agents, we have a literary agent, Emma Finn, coming along to that. So please come to that one and kind of save off any questions on agents for Emma. But I was going to ask Kit and Juliana quickly. So Kit, if you have any advice in a few words, just for people who are looking to get an agent.
It's a bit like trial and error I think a lot of people also talk about luck. It's a lot to do with luck, but also I suppose is you could look at the agents, what writers they've got, who they're representing, and whether those writers speak to you. If some writers really speak to you on that agent's list, and I think there's some kind of connection there that you should definitely try.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. And Juliana, another question we had was, what are the benefits of having an agent?
Well, there are lots. So, as I said, when I won the Northern Writers Awards and the Northbound Award, publication was part of it. And often agents might not want to take you on if you have a publishing contract already. But Will was actually really keen and said to me that I should try to get an agent if I can. And my agent has been able to open out the opportunity. So I was really excited at having one and having a publisher, but she sold the audio rights and she knows a lot about rights, and so was able to negotiate a different kind of contract for me. I wouldn't have known the questions to ask. She also read the manuscript and asked me how I felt about it and negotiated some more time for me to adapt it to make sure I was as happy as possible. I think having an agent is having somebody on your side who's confident enough to ask for things and also knows what to ask for. So it's, yeah, I found it really invaluable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they are incredibly valuable people to have on your side, aren't they? Because they know the technicalities of kind of contracts and agreements and all of that, but they also have all those practical skills, but they also have these kind of creative understanding of your work as well, and these networks they've built up as well with publishers over the years. So,
and they care about your career. It's not just about the single book, so they encourage you to think kind of long term. And give you the confidence to think long term and not just feel as though it's a dream.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's really important as well, that they have that kind of sense of your long term career and a wider sense of what your work is as well. Beyond just one book. That they understand that there are other books you want to write that might not be exactly the same as this one you've written. Exactly. It might be pretty different actually, going other direction, and that they can see a sort of wider picture to your work, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Just sort of on these kind of questions to do with the professions. For Alex and Polly, what advice do you have for people approaching broadcasters or publishers who are at an early career stage? So, I was going to ask Alex to talk about broadcasters and Polly about publishers. You don't have to do that, but I think it makes sense. Do you want to go first, Alex?
Yeah, I would repeat basically quite similar to what Kit was saying, is if you are going to approach, you would probably approach production companies more than you would actually go straight to broadcaster. So definitely know what you're actually approaching them with, because people are extremely busy. So kind of just suppose sending people emails going hi, probably won't get you a reply. You're probably best to sort of email or actually go to networking events or join sort of like groups, especially online, which I found really helpful, where a lot of producers will be sort of like networking and talking, and you get a real sense of what kind of things they want to make and whether you fit that, and then put together your pitch document or a slate of what you actually want them to work with you on. So it's kind of like going in with a juicy little hamper of all the lovely stuff that they're going to make with you and make it so delicious they can't refuse it. I think I'm thinking of your recipe kit. So it's sort of like, just give them something lovely, and hopefully then they'll want to come on board and go and sell it further afield, or work with you to get it even better and then go and sell it on your behalf. So it's kind of, it's not kind of chancing it on two sentences. You have to actually show that you have really thought about what project you want them to work on you with for what can be 5, 6, 7 years to actually get a piece before it's greenlit. So there's several processes to television. So it could take a really, really long time to get a series up on its feet. So you have to appreciate that they're probably doing that with 15 other people all at the same time. So they're very busy people. So go in with something that people can't refuse. I suppose that's the best advice.
It's good advice, yeah.
We don't like to be able to do it, but you know.
And Polly, for publishers, and I guess specifically for poetry publishers.
So I love the idea of having a juicy hamper of your work that they are just going to absolutely love. So it in some ways, like, poetry publishing has changed quite a lot in the last decade, that there is a lot more smaller presses now. There are a lot more kind of micro presses, and I think there are more opportunities for publishing in some ways than there have been, but it's a very competitive world as well. So there's always far too many poets for each publishing opportunity. So the advice is always that you should try and get lots of individual poems published before you try and send a publisher a pamphlet length work, so a kind of EP of your work, if that's still a term anyone uses, or a kind of full collection length. And I didn't know that when I was a baby poet, because I didn't know any real poets at all. I used to send work to Faber, expecting that they might want to publish it. I had literally no idea of the correct way to do things, because I didn't have access to any of this information that is much more widely available now. There's loads of really good organizations that give advice on this kind of stuff as well, and there's lists of publishers online as well that you can go to. That's a website that's been around for a long time that's really useful is Poetry Kit, that still has quite updated lists of publishers that are open, and also the South Bank Centre as well does. And they'll tell you who is actually accepting manuscripts for a start, because that's a really good idea, is not to spam publishers you might want to work with work when they're not actually accepting it. And then just be gracious and nice. I think that helps as well. Like, you hear a lot from publishers that they've rejected someone and then they get like a spite letter back. Don't ever do that. Like, no matter how badly you take it, just don't do that.
No, yeah, that's really good advice. Yeah, but a little bit of optimism then, I guess, around poetry there, that it's not as close as it used to be.
I think there's a much healthier ecosystem now than there used to be in a lot of ways. There are a lot more smaller grassroots publishers. They're slightly less based in London as well, because that's always a problem, and one of the reasons why New Writing North is so important. Obviously there's publishers like Blood Axe which are outside London, but even they, I remember when I was really struggling to get my first collection published, sitting in a talk where everybody said that the only place that they find new poets is the Eric Gregory Awards, and then you feel like if you haven't won one, then you're basically on the trash fire forever. So trying to get yourself seen and noticed, unfortunately, is a big kind of part of that as well. And if you're not actually in those same places as people, for whatever reason, then it becomes even more difficult. So things like being able to say, well, I won a Northern Writers Award becomes really important in, as I said before, kind of proving that somebody finds your work interesting and worthwhile.
Yeah, okay, absolutely though. And I'm just going to quickly go through a couple of questions that have appeared in the chat. So there's one here from someone who applied for both the Bonafide and Lime Awards last year. It was shortlisted for one, and the question I guess is for Alex. Did you apply for both? Because I should explain really, most of the awards you can only enter one award at a time, but for the TV awards you can enter for both TV strands of the award. And I guess the question for Alex is did you enter for both, and would you recommend writing for both?
I think that they're two very different opportunities. They seem similar because they're both for television, but they're actually very different because, like I say, entering into an existing show, you learn different skills on that mentorship than you would working with Bonafide, where it's on an original idea, where really the mentorship then is about extracting and developing your individual voice and what you're trying to say. Whereas when you're entering into an existing show, you're very much writing for characters that people already love and know, and that is a real skill to be able to enter into something that's pre-existing and create from beat sheets that you're going to be given to you, and then pitch in writers' rooms. Those are completely different skills than, so the two mentorships are really different. And for me, because it was an original idea, it made sense to just apply to one rather than both. So yeah.
So I think that really made much more sense for where you were, didn't it? Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. There's another question here, which is about how you use the bursary for the award, and what what legitimately people can use the money for. So I kind of answered that by saying that the money has to be used to support the project that you've applied for. That's really essential because we're basing it on the project. That's why we're giving you the award. And that could be interpreted in a sense that it's going to be something that's, the use of the money is going to help to move that project on in some way. So that can be buying yourself time to write, it can be providing yourself with a writing retreat or some time away, or equipment if needed, if that's going to help you to do it. I mean, is it okay if I ask you guys a little bit more about, are you happy sharing how you would have spent your bursaries? I know, Alex, you have a little bit already, but Kit, Polly?
Yeah, so I mean, something I didn't say at the beginning, which I should have done probably as well, is that having said I've applied in other years as well, both the times that I have won a prize, it's been a year where I've been in a really dire situation, actually. So in 2014, when I won, I was 4 years out from my PhD, and still didn't have a full-time job. I'd been doing a few years of hourly paid university work, which at that time I didn't think could get any worse, and actually is paid less now, which I'm back doing it occasionally than it was in 2014. Yay. But I've been applying for jobs, I've been applying for grants, I've been sending stuff to publishers. I was just in a really dark place. So both times it's basically bought me time to write, but also just taken that financial stress away, which has meant that I've also been able to kind of open up and think, okay, I can write, rather than just panicking as well about my financial situation. So it's very much given me that financial security that allows me to spend the time writing instead.
And is anyone else, Kit or Juliana, to share anything on that?
Yeah, I think what's good about the financial support is you have a very inclusive policy, don't you? Where it could be spent in any way that is helping your writing. And I think in the application, you can articulate what you really need. And I think, and I just think that it helps that it's not specific. You know, you have to spend it in a particular way. And I think unlike some writing awards, like you have to spend it in a retreat or you have to do it like that. I think that inclusiveness is really, really important.
Yeah. Okay. Fab. Just quickly go through for some of the questions. There's one here. Recently finished a writing course and got selected for a paid mentoring scheme for my novel, which I'm developing. Can I apply? Yeah, you can. There's a question here. Oh, this is a good. So we are getting quite short of time, but there's one here. Does anyone else write a novel without a plan first? Just sit down and let it out as it comes. For the novelists in the room.
Julia?
I mostly did that with my first novel, and I'm trying not to do that with the thing that I'm working on now, because it took so long, and at some stage in the editing process you have to sit down and plan. I had to break it all apart and try and figure out what it was going to do and where the narrative kind of push was coming from. So I have done it, and it was a painful experience, and so I'm trying to do it the other way, but the other way is less intuitive, but I'm hoping that in the long run I will learn things from the process. How did you find it, Kit?
Yeah, I think you need to have a plan. You really need. It's like, I mean, lots of people use different kind of metaphors for writing fiction, whether it's a journey or, I mean, it would be quite frightening if you go on a journey without a plan. I mean, in all those metaphors, they all involve some kind of premeditated thinking, and I think you need to have a plan. Whether the plan is like, it doesn't need to be like forensic. It just need to be enough for you to feel like you have a safety net to fall back on if your imagination is taking you 3,000 feet above ground. And I think the plan, it's time to think the plan not as an enemy, but more like a friend, but on a good day, even like a partner or a lover. So don't think of the plan as an enemy. That's not.
Okay, make friends with the plan.
No.
Yeah, okay. It's good advice. We're running out of time. I'm just going to ask one final question that maybe if each of you could answer. This is the question that came into us. So how have you managed to carve out a creative space in your life to dedicate to your writing? And I think this is a really good question to get, actually, whoever sent it. It feels particularly kind of poignant this year as well, when there's just this huge volume of unexpected demands on everybody all the time. So how do you carve out that creative space? And I guess we'll just go around, start with Juliana.
I was really hoping you wouldn't start with me. At the moment, if I'm completely honest, I'm really struggling to find the time. I've just started a new role at a university, and I actually think winning the award and having a publication on the horizon played a part and helped in getting that role. But there's so much going on, and I'm very aware of how little time I have to write, and the things that I hoped I would do in the lead up to the novel coming out. I hoped I'd have a first draft of my second novel before the first one came out. So I would be really interested to hear what the other writers have to say, because at the moment I'm struggling to carve time out.
Yeah, well, that's understandable, absolutely. I'm just honestly, there's no intent to this. I'm just going by who I can see next on my screen. So Polly.
Yeah, so I suppose I'm at the other end of the bit that Juliana's talking about in some ways, that when I won my first award in 2014, as I said, I was struggling to find work. At the end of that year, I started a 3-year full-time academic job, and it was actually a disaster in terms of writing for me, but partly also because at the same time I'd been really ill for a few years and hadn't known why, and I'd been told in the end that there was absolutely nothing wrong with me by several doctors, in quite rude ways. And then kind of a month after I started the job in the autumn, I found out that I have a hereditary connective tissue disorder, which is what was making me ill. And then the following year, I found out that I have another condition that was making me ill too. And it really made me reassess how I was spending my time and what I wanted to be spending my time on. And I was really unhappy in that job. I was really stressed. The teaching was wonderful. And if any of my ex-students are listening, I love you. You were amazing. You kept me going, because the students were just phenomenal. But I realized that I really did have to carve out more time. And after that, I decided to try going freelance and see what happened when that job ended. And so for the last 3 years, I've been working freelance part-time, and and having more time to write. And it is financially insecure. I'm not going to lie about that. But it does mean that I can balance writing with my conditions, which I wouldn't be able to do otherwise. There would be absolutely no hope of me writing anything if I was working full time.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, time obviously is just so important. Where you find it, if it's the cracks in the day or, in the corner of the kitchen,
Well, you hear a lot from people saying kind of they get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to work. And this is something I hear disabled writers complaining about a lot, that a lot of the how to find time to write relies on you having energy and having kind of full bodily capacity to begin with. And there's absolutely no hope of that, I think, particularly if you're struggling with fatigue in the first place.
Yeah, so you've got to prioritize, haven't you? Find, I suppose, what it's so challenging. Thank you. That's really inspiring to hear, actually. Kit, writing time. I know you've got a pretty demanding day job and life in general.
Yeah, I have to confess, writing is always my second life, because I have to earn a living, and I work in the Hull York Medical School, in a kind of senior administrative position, so it's quite demanding. And as what's happening with the pandemic, it's just been, I think, but it also gave me a real perspective, thinking that life is hard, but not as hard as people working the NHS, because it is absolutely terrible. But I found time. I think I actually like the idea that I don't have enough time to write, because it's a good excuse, isn't it? For me sometimes. But when I do have time, then I really have to be really well disciplined. And I think discipline. I heard a lot of writers do talk about discipline, and it helps, I think, having discipline. But I also don't try to blame myself if I'm not able to write. I think it's so easy to have self-guilt. I should be writing, but I'm not writing. Why are you not writing? I think it's a kind of dilemma that we all have as writers, but I try not to blame myself, really, because I don't think the blame ultimately is productive. So when I do have the little time that I have, so I'm planning to do a little bit of writing on Saturday. Maybe if I'm lucky, I might have like half a day. So I'll just try to use it as productive as possible. But if it's not productive, I just won't beat myself up for it.
Yeah. Okay. No, don't. Just you've got to. I suppose you've got to be kinder to yourself, actually, haven't you? When you, about what you can and can't achieve. And Alex, just finally with you.
I think it's really varied throughout my sort of like, not career, my sort of like contribution to writing. It's varied. When I was a young mum, there was no chance. I was exhausted. I don't know how people with young babies and stuff write. I was just tired all the time. And then I've sort of like had different jobs, sort of like 12-hour shifts doing this, strange shift patterns where it means that you don't really know whether you're going to be in work the next day or at all. And I find that, I don't know, it's sort of like echoing everyone's sentiments of writing isn't just when you're there tapping away. It's very much in the napping and the thinking and the connections that happen when you're kind of in conversation at work or trying to avoid conversations with people you don't like at work, and hiding in the toilets. All these different life things sort of, I don't know, pull the story together and make getting to the keyboard a little bit easier, I suppose. So I think for me it's being assertive and disciplined with myself when I have 2 or 3 hours, that I will give it to myself and other people aren't allowed to take it. It becomes quite sacred, and then I will sit and I will do it. But there's a whole process of weeks worth of maybe other demands taking over, and then you're not actually putting words on that blank page, you're thinking more about it and brewing it. So yeah, rather than waffle on about that, I'll leave it there. But yeah, quite like Kit, there's sort of like discipline and assertiveness to actually hold on to the time once you get it.
Yeah, right. I can see that. Absolutely. Okay. I'm conscious that we've kind of run out of time, actually, and it's been so lovely to talk to each of you. I'm really grateful for how much you shared with us. You know, how kind of open you've been in your answers, and how kind and encouraging as well for people who've been watching, and just you know, it's been lovely to see each of you. It's really good to see how we've kind of complimented each other and talked to each other without actually kind of having ever met before. It's been really nice. So thank you for being in. I wanted to say thanks as well to the audience for so many brilliant questions, actually, and I'm sorry that we couldn't quite answer every single one of them. If you can get along to any of our other roadshows, then please do come along and ask questions there, and hopefully, you know, you'll get them answered. You can email questions to me as well if it's kind of practical stuff to do with you know, to do with the website or the awards, or you know, what you need to submit, the length of things. There's a FAQ section on the website too. I would say a final thank you as well to all our awards partners. Like I say, there are lots of different partners, but you know, they're all kind of listed on our website, and we're hugely grateful to them for allowing us to have the capacity to do the work that we do. And again, just thank you to everybody who's kind of considering entering the awards. We really hope that you do. And huge thanks to our previous winners for being here with us tonight. It's getting on to nearly 8 o'clock, so dinner time, I think. But lovely to see you all, guys.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you all.
Great talk.